Welcome in, Tiger fans, to another episode of Bayou Bengal Bites. Got myself and Tyler here today to break down everything LSU sports and LSU football. Tyler, how's it going to be a Tiger fan?
Yeah, it's definitely easier this week after winning a bounce back win against Grambling, but now the real deal begins. Business trip to Starkville to face off against Mississippi State as conference play opens up, and with Alabama and Texas A&M following this week, the SEC West looks wide open this year.
Yep, no, I agree with you. It was surprising to see both of them fall on the same weekend. The ACC seems to have the SEC's number, and then also, of course, Texas trying to make their grand entrance next year. So, luckily, LSU doesn't have to play Texas this year. I don't know how they would fare, but we could always improve. So, you mentioned the Grambling State game. Let's recap that real quick before we get to Mississippi State. All right, so Grambling State came into Death Valley hoping that they would win this trip. First time the Tigers and the Tigers have played since their existence. That was not the case. Of course, they started off hot. As an LSU fan, I was worried because they were just torching our defense in the running game, third and longs. They were all over the place. But luckily, our offense scored on 10 straight tries, finished the game 72-10. That's the exact kind of game I wanted to see from the offense. The first half of the defense left a little bit to be desired. So, Tyler, what did you see from the Tigers against an inferior foe?
Yeah, other than the first half, I think that the defense fared well after that. Grambling was able to score right away, got that touchdown, and then the second drive, they were able to drive down the field once again, and then LSU's defense was able to hold them to a field goal. There was a lot of big runs. Grambling had a lot of big plays. That definitely has to be cleaned up moving forward because you won't be able to have that luxury whenever you go into SEC play this week. But outside of that, the offense, you can't ask for much. They scored on every single drive except for the last one whenever they took a knee. So I think that, the offense, we saw Jade Daniels. I didn't really see him take off and run. He didn't really need to. The offensive line was able to let him create time in the pocket, and he found Brian Thomas. I think that he was definitely my player of the game. He really had a nice game, 2 touchdowns to his name. But I think that the main story is that the running game was able to get going. In week number one, it was non-existent. We saw Trey Bradford be the guy. We saw Josh Williams get that big run. But Logan Diggs was the guy that I was hoping for seeing, and we saw him a lot. I think that he should be the RB1 moving forward. I just think that whenever he's on the field, he's just the guy that can create that elite level of separation that you want. So I think that Diggs, he had 115 rushing yards and a couple of touchdowns. So I think the main takeaway is just this was a get right game before your real meat of the schedule begins.
Yeah, I mean, this is the games that I'd like to see them play week one. I've been pretty vocal about that I think they should play these easier games week one and get all of your kinks worked out and not open up against a top 10 opponent. But for the past 5 years, that's what LSU has done. So you mentioned some of them. Let's get to the positive takeaways. Okay, so positive takeaways from the Grambling game. There was a good bit from the offense. Of course, Jaden Daniels looked really well. He threw for 5 touchdowns. He stayed in the pocket, like you mentioned, and seemed to go through his progressions, and you didn't see him just take off and run. So that, of course, the offensive line had a much better game. You got to see Zalance Hurd in there as well and shifting Emory Jones to the guard position. I think that's going to be LSU's starting offensive line going forward because uh, Zalance Hurd is he's a bigger and more physical guy. Not to take anything away from Emory Jones, he's still a great offensive lineman, but I mean, Hurd just bullies these dudes. So now you got another freshman in his first season starting for LSU. I don't think Brian Kelly said that they're going to start against Mississippi State, but he's going to be worked in. So the offensive line looked good. Nussmeier picked up right where he left off against Georgia. I mean, he came in there slinging the rock. Of course, he would have had a few more touchdowns. There's a few drops when he was throwing to the second string wide receivers. So it started a quarterback controversy with the fans. I still think Daniels is the right guy for the job. It's just the offensive play calling has to get better to suit his to kind of suit his game, right? We had very few penalties, so that's always a positive takeaway. And the defense looked slow in the first half, like we mentioned, but at halftime they came out, made adjustments, and they shut out Grambling State for the rest of the game. So, Tyler, what are some of your positive takeaways? You mentioned Logan Diggs, I mean, he just came out. I mean, he runs hard and physical. I think he's got to be RB1.
Yeah, I think so. He just gives you a different look. Josh Williams is more of that bowling ball running back, and then we haven't seen Armani Goodwin. Who knows if we're going to see John Emery? It's sounding like this is going to be the week leading up to the Mississippi State game that we're going to see them. But Logan Diggs would be my vote for RB1. But I'm on the same path as you as the takeaways. I just like seeing some new faces on the field. In the offensive line, you saw Hurd. And then on the defensive side, you saw Mason Smith returning back to the lineup. But that was nice to see number 0 back on the defensive line. You saw Harold Perkins get more involved. Seems like the coaches learned their lesson from week 1 against Florida State. Then we also saw Denver Harris. All the talk about him being a 5-star recruit. He went to Texas A&M. Didn't really fare off. He has a little bit of issues off the field as well. Brian Kelly didn't really talk heavily about him throughout fall camp, but he was able to give him a chance against Grambling. He had that one play where that Grambling receiver mossed him, but outside of that, I think that he had a good game. He just really needs to see the field more, and then we saw more of Aaron Anderson in this game, both in the punt return and also being in the wide receiver. We also saw Chris Hilton Jr. I think that he needs to be on the field too. That one touchdown, he was just gone. So I think that he has elite level speed that's
For
not
sure.
really suitable for the bench. He needs to be on the field at all times. Even if you want to put him in the punt return, that definitely wouldn't be a bad option either. So I think, nonetheless, there's not really any negatives that you can take from a game like this. You're supposed to win this game, dominating factor. To put up 72 points on offense, it's always great news, especially after week 1. You looked very rough against a very good Florida State team. So definitely a lot of positives to take away from the Grambling game.
Yeah, no, you mentioned Chris Hilton. I think he's got to be someone on the field. Brian Kelly, it doesn't matter freshman, sophomore, junior, senior. You just got to play your best players, and I think we saw that. Of course, like you said, it's Grambling State. You can't hype it up too much. The real test will be this week against Mississippi State. So let's get to it. All right, Tyler, tell us about Mississippi State. You wrote an article on it. What do you see from the Bulldogs this year?
Yeah, the Bulldogs are 2-0 to start the season. Their 2 wins are 48-7, dominating performance in week number 1 against Southeastern Louisiana. But they were tested against Arizona. They held a 14-7 lead, and then Arizona was able to bounce back in the second half. They were able to kick a late field goal, go in overtime, and then Mississippi State was able to get a game-winning touchdown with a 25-yard touchdown pass as they were able to come away with a 31-24 victory. And everyone is questioning what is going on with this Mississippi State offense. We're so used to the Mike Leach era, them just airing it out. Will Rogers was throwing it 40 plus times a game, but
Yeah.
Saturday he only threw for 13 of 17. He only had 13 completions against an Arizona defense that was pretty good. But Mississippi State's defense was also able to create some turnovers. They were able to get 5. Now, some people say, well, you got 5 turnovers, but you still had to go in overtime. That's definitely concerning. It definitely is. But Mississippi State, they're definitely loaded on the offensive side. They are really wanting to put an emphasis on running the ball. Zach Arnett, their head coach, has put an emphasis on that. Jaquavius Marks is their leading rusher. He's a very physical running back. We saw him in the same game last year. He had a touchdown against this LSU defense. So he had success early on, but Mississippi State really went away from the run. I don't think that's going to happen this year. This Mississippi State offense is built on running the ball. Their offense coordinator and their head coach has already put a stamp on that. But I wouldn't be shocked if Will Rogers tried to light it up, because I know that this Mississippi State offense has looked at the film and looking at that LSU secondary, there's definitely some holes that they can take care of. So I think that early on they are going to be running the football, but it wouldn't shock me if they're at the half, if it's like a 7-point game or a 3-point game. They're like, all right, let's go ahead and attack this secondary. So don't forget about Will Rogers, their defense. They can create some turnovers. They're definitely a ball hawk type of team. They did lose a lot of talent on the defensive side into the NFL draft, but they were able to reload through the portal and through their recruiting trail. So the Bulldogs on offense are averaging 221.5 rushing yards in their 2 victories against Southeastern and also Arizona. And also, their offense ranks 31st in the country with 39.5 points per game, and they average 416 yards per game, which ranks them 57th. Now, on the other side, on the defense, their defense is only giving up 15.5 points per game, which ranks them 39th in the country. So that's a little bit about the Bulldogs.
So I've polled a few Mississippi State fans trying to get an unbiased opinion on the show, right? That's what we're about. Um, they're pleased with their team, right? But their concern is the play calling. So you mentioned they're really dedicated to the running the ball, which in my eyes, based off the Grambling game, I don't know how to feel about LSU's run defense. But I think Mason Smith was still a little bit, maybe not 100%. So I think he'll be back this week. Of course, you got Makai Wingo up there on the line, and I think they'll be able to plug those holes, be good there. Brian Kelly announced yesterday Omar Spates is doubtful to play, so that hurts. Losing your starting linebacker, but he's got Greg Penn and the Weeks brothers ready to play to step in if needed. And of course, Perkins will be playing his, like I like to call it, his Terminator role. He just roams around and goes and gets the ball. So I think if you do that and you go back to your old style of defense where you allow Perkins to just get the quarterback, they're going to be forced to run the ball at that point. And I think our defensive line will hold up. Now, the secondary concerns me. Denver Harris, he looked good. Of course, you mentioned he got mossed by that Grambling State wide receiver, and he had the pass interference call that was ticky tacky there. I don't really agree with that, but I think you also got to realize that was his first game in like 18 months. I mean, he missed the entire majority of the season last year with Texas A&M after he got basically kicked off the team, and then he transferred, missed a lot of the spring ball and stuff like that. So I think probably just some rust got knocked out off. So I think he'll be fine in the secondary. But the key that I want to watch is how Mississippi State, how their play calling really fares, if they're going to lean heavy on the run or if they're going to make adjustments to torch our secondary as they've done in the years past. You mentioned Will Rogers is no stranger to throwing 40, 50, 60 times a game. So it'll be interesting to see what the Tigers do and how they bring out that defensive play call and to mitigate the state offense. Of course, it's 11 a.m. game. LSU seems to never wake up for 11 a.m., but they better because those cowbells are going to be ringing. It's going to be like an alarm clock that you want to just hit snooze. It's Brian Kelly's first time to Davis Wade Stadium, so that'll be interesting to see how he reacts. Uh, let's get to some keys to success here, Tyler. All right, keys to success. I mentioned a few of them with the defensive side, but I think the offense, you really have to find that starting lineup for LSU and get the line established early because you can't have Jane Daniels be your leading rusher. I mean, State struggled with a mobile quarterback last week with Arizona, but I think Daniels needs to sit in the pocket, and you got to give it to guys like Logan Diggs, Josh Williams, Caleb Jackson is supposed to be playing. Brian Kelly said we'll see a lot more freshmen than we're used to. I think another key is to throw the ball deep. Chris Hilton, 3 or 4 times a game, just send him on a go route to the end zone. And if he catches it, great. If he doesn't, you at least put that in the defense coordinator's mind that hey, they're not scared to take shots. We need to step back a little bit, and that will possibly allow your run game to get going. And then of course, defense needs to stop this new state rushing attack. I mean, they're averaging like 200 yards a game rushing the ball. So that's something new. And I think you got to watch for Mason Smith. I think this is his coming out game. His you could call it his draft game, right? I mean, of course, he missed the whole season. He's been a little slow getting back. I think this is where he establishes dominance. So Tyler, what's your keys to success for the Tigers?
Yeah, I think that you said it right there. Arizona's quarterback was able to have success. Mississippi State struggled against a dual threat quarterback, so would not shock me if Mike Denbrock called some plays of some quarterback design runs, and we see Jane Daniels really take away from some of the negatives that we saw with Mississippi State in week number two. But I think that the matchup, we all know it. It's going to be the Mississippi State rushing attack versus LSU's defensive line. You got your two guys in the middle, Makai Wingo and also Mason Smith, and you'll have Harold Perkins come on the outside. So really, if you can bog down, I hate to say, like, you got to be able to force Mississippi State to throw the ball. I wouldn't be saying that in the
Hmm.
past couple of years, but you got to take away the bread and butter, what they've been doing in the past couple of weeks, and that is just running the football up the middle. So if you can just negate the big plays. I think that LSU will be fine in this one. I think that I know that we love seeing Jane Daniels run off. I think that he's going to have a great game in the rushing, but take some deep shots.
I agree with
Just
you.
go ahead. If you get the ball first, go ahead first play, take a deep shot. You
Oh,
got to get off
definitely.
you got to get off to a fast start, and you got to wake up for your 11 a.m. games. Last year, you did not do a very good job of that. You went one and
Nope.
one in an 11 a.m. game. Your first one, everybody remembers 40-13 against Tennessee in your home stadium, and then coming off of the Alabama victory, you only won 13-10 against a snoozer against Arkansas when Arkansas and KJ Jefferson wasn't even available in that one. They had to go to the backup. So I think they definitely need to fare well better in these 11 a.m. games, especially on the road. It's going to be a hostile environment. Going into Mississippi State, it's just a unique environment with those cowbells. So they've been playing it in practice at the cowbells, getting used to it. But it's a different story whenever you step on the field and you hear 60,000 plus fans ringing those bells for 3 hours. So I think that those are the main keys to success if LSU wants to come away with a victory and start conference play 1-0.
Every player needs to take about 3 or 4 ibuprofen before they go into the game, just to go ahead and get that headache ready because those cowbells, I mean, are insane. They got to get a little kick in their coffee, maybe like some double espresso shot. I mean, venti from Starbucks. I don't know because LSU just does not wake up. It's a good thing we're not in the Big 10 or Big 12 for these noon kickoffs because for some reason we just don't get up early. I think we're everybody likes to tailgate and roll out of bed, get some good breakfast. So it's time. I mean, you're on the road in a very hostile environment against a Mississippi State team that, I mean, I'm not saying they're going to win the SEC West, but they're one of those teams that they never have anything to lose. And so they're just going to bring out the playbook on you and see what sticks. So wake up early, Tigers. Get ready to go. Us fans will watch College Game Day straight into the LSU game, or you watch us before the game. That way you get your full recap preview. Hit that subscribe button. You know where to find us. So let's get to some around town news, Tyler. All right, so around town news I got for you is LSU announced their 2024 baseball schedule. Looking at it, just some big notes. You got Florida at home, Vanderbilt at home, and then you go on the road to Tennessee. So you got some tough Eastern opponents. Which will there be a East and a West in baseball next year, or
Yeah,
is
there
will
is
that?
because
Okay,
Texas is not officially going to join the conference till July, so it won't be to the 2025 season that you see the Longhorns on the schedule. But you do already because in the Astros Foundation Classic
that is true.
over there in Minute Maid, that's the opening game on Friday night.
Yeah, I think Tyler. I think you and I ought to make our way down to Houston and catch that tournament. You got Texas, UL Lafayette, and Texas State for LSU, so that'd be some good matchups. We get some unfamiliar names. North Dakota State coming to play in a back-to-back midweek game. You play Tuesday, Wednesday. That's interesting. Of course, you play Southeastern Louisiana at home. I don't see Tulane on the schedule or UNO. We have Stony Brook, Tyler, in February. Stony Brook and Alex Box Stadium. So you got to watch out for those guys. So what do you think about? It's way too early for baseball. We're in football, but we'll see some interesting foes coming into Alex Box. What do you think about the schedule, Tyler?
Yeah, already Jay Johnson. If you look at the schedule, it's back to back four game series to start. So it's going to be a lot of games to open up the season. I do like that they're going back to Minute Maid Park. I think that's definitely a great early test. Texas is going to be really good. Louisiana Lafayette is very good in the Sun Belt, and you got Texas State, who's years have been. 2 years ago they were almost an out away from a super regional against Stanford. But I think that SEC schedule, man, I mean, that is just absolutely brutal. Like the month of
Yeah.
March and April is when, if you just get out of there like 500, that's definitely a win. So I think that definitely you got to take care of business. And Florida coming back, I mean, if that's not the national championship celebration, you better put that banner up because they did the same thing to
Raise the
us.
banner.
Yeah, they did the same thing to us whenever they won the national championship in 2017. They honored their baseball team whenever they played LSU in football. So I think you do the same thing in
They didn't win.
football whenever Florida comes to Baton Rouge this year for football. Put them out for the celebration. Do the same thing. Just like gloat all over Florida in that series. But definitely a really good series in North Dakota State. Stony Brook's going to be coming back. I know that it's definitely a
Nightmares.
cringe. Yeah,
Nightmares.
nightmares. But we already curse those demons away. You know, they came here in 2019 for the regional, and they beat them like 16-4 or something like that. So yeah, the SEC stretch is very daunting.
No, definitely. I mean, towards the end of March, you got Florida, Arkansas, and then beginning of April, Vanderbilt, Tennessee. I mean, those are
Gee.
4 weeks. I mean, before Florida, you play Mississippi State. So, I mean, we got State, Florida, Arkansas, Vanderbilt, Tennessee, Missouri, Auburn, A&M, Alabama, Ole Miss. I don't see a week where you can really let up. So it's going to be some great baseball for LSU next season. I'm looking forward to it. We didn't give score predictions. Tyler, what's your score prediction for State and LSU?
I think that Mississippi State covers the 9.5, but LSU gets the win 31-27.
Okay, 9.5 is a lot, and I usually have been going against it, but you know what? Give it to LSU. I'm going 42 to 28. I think LSU runs away with it later in the game. So, all right, well, that was this week's episode of Bayou Bengal Bites. As always, leave a comment with your score protection or your score prediction and what you think the Tiger is going to do during this game. Hit that subscribe button, turn on the alerts so you're notified when we post again. Tyler, it's been a pleasure. I'll see you next week. Go Tigers.